still have a few folks coming in. I'll go ahead and get started. A little bit of an overview. This is the last of a series that we put together on just order management. Basically, everything after the order is sent to the factory. Includes little things like resale orders, a little bit of invoicing. Obviously, the accounting side of it is a big deal. Shipping, and now a little bit more. So let's go through that step. So reconciling commission, resale orders, shipping is what we did last month. This month is paying salespeople, reporting, and just kind of a potpourri of reports, really, is where we're at today. Just real quick, if you're interested in potentially doing some training here in Little Rock, just pop us a note. We're trying to decide if it's something people would be interested in doing. It'll take a bit for us to put together, so we just want to find out if anybody would be interested in just doing OASIS training here. So let us know, and just email support or anybody on this to let us know if you're interested. Okay. Major processes to consider. We've been through most of them, as I've already hinted at a couple of times now, and now we're basically doing reports. So not the exciting stuff, but some of it is kind of neat. So, all right, main thing is commissions for accounts. We'll go over that a little bit. Some aging reports. We've already been through commissions aging and resale aging. That'll be in the other videos if you want to look at those. I'll touch on PAT aging one last time. We did that a little bit previously, but I'll touch on it one last time as well. And paychecks, that's a new system that will eventually replace the commissions for accounts. I'm going to postpone that one and talk about that in early 2024. That'll actually come up with another series of webinars that will start later this year, and it'll probably cap it off once that's done. So anyway, we'll hold off on that. So if you don't see that today, that's what's going on. All right, we've been through a lot of the details here. I'll skip most of these because these were the notes basically for the ones that the webinars we did previously in this series. Today, here's the items we're going to go through, and it's quite a task list here. So I'll see what I can do to make sure I get those done as accurately as possible. Now, as before, if you have any questions, you can unmute, just shout them at me if you want, or you can hit and type into the chat. Cameron is monitoring for today. He will stop me with the comments or suggestions or questions, and I'll switch gears and start answering those up. So, all right, here we go. Service-related reporting. Now, what I try to do is come up with just some basics here. Obviously, there's a lot of other items that people really need to do as far as servicing order after the fact, and just trying to see what is available. And so I just kind of picked a few that are still out there that we get calls and questions on throughout the day, the business day. Let me see if I can pull up OASIS here. Now with OASIS, I'm going to start with the basics here on hold orders. One thing to note is the assumption that we have when we're building the system, and you'll see more of this as we get into 04 and the various webinars later this year. Kind of the goal is to get through and have the system direct you or help you go through this or process is the best way to explain it. So the first thing is, if you have a process to enter hold orders, at some point you want to go back and identify what happened to that hold order. Is the distributor sitting on it? Is the contractor sitting on it? Well, what's happening with that hold order? So if you do place a hold order in OASIS, it will track it here. So you can just click on hold and partial release orders. That's pretty much all you have to do. I'll show you another trick here in a second. Well, actually, I'll go and start on another way. There's two other ways you can actually set up a list like this, and I'll show you one of them right now. The other option actually is just to run a regular report, and I wanted to set up a few of these reports to kind of show you other features that you may not be aware of out there. So for a hold order report, I'll do a real basic customizable order listing report. I wanted to do this just to show you how to set up a basic report here, and then later I'll show you the little trick at the end. So under selection, what I can do is identify anything that has a release status that's hold only, or a partial. So if you have orders in the system where some of it's released, some of it's on hold still, you basically pull that up. Now, most reports you want to have a time frame on. This one I like to see people go without a time frame. again, if you have some old data in the system, maybe from 2008 or something like that, you might want to go through and clean up that data. But I like to run it wide open, in other words, without a time frame, and that gives me whatever the orders are here. So I only have 10 in this little test database. I'm sure anybody who has these processes at an agency or distributor probably have some more out there. So you have a question there? Okay. All right. So I'll keep it real simple. This is just building a set of reports. There's actually a layout we can go through. And I didn't want to get real deep into how the report builder works within Oasis. I've done that a little bit in another webinar, but I did want to show this and bring it back to, again, show some details here. So I'm going to give it a name. So hold image and print it, just so we can see what the result is. And again, it's just a nice little list. And if you save it, this is for some reason it kind of popped back there. If you save it, with floppy disk save icon, it will save that report down to report section. Okay. And when that happens, it's right up here under hold orders. If I double click on it, I can print it or I can edit it again. So if I edit, I can go through and make some changes, or I can just hit print and it's the same report. More on this one in a minute. Again, I just want to focus on one task. That's just keeping up with hold orders in the system, and just a little bit real quick on how to see that information a couple of different ways. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to do is very similar to that. And the thought process here is if I have a need to see the orders that were entered in last week. Again, this is more customer service driven, or maybe even sales. I see this happen sometimes with groups that want to update the sales team with what's been posted to the system, or booked, if you will, over the past week or month, if you will, whatever your time frame is. There are a lot of ways to do this. One way I like to do it is go into reports. And again, you can use that customizable order listing, but I want to show you kind of a quick way to get a lot of these reports without having to go through and figure out which little details or little items. It's called order transaction reports. What we've done is added in a number of the standard canned reports a lot of people try to look at. And one of them is just basic bookings. I want to see what we booked over a certain time frame. So this is last quarter, or I can say last week to this week. I'll leave this one where it's at because I remember pulling up some data when I was getting ready for this meeting a little earlier today. But what you can do on this is you can then take this information and split it out by sales account. So if you want to show that to your sales team, or you can go through and group it by maybe the customer service team. So maybe by work group, sales account, maybe by customers. And again, it gives you some basic canned ways of grouping this information. So all it is bookings, typically for a time frame. Personally, I like to do last week, but again, this is a small database. It's just a simple report that we can create and show everything broken out by, in this case, brand is what I had selected. Okay. So again, where that's at is to show you where it's at real quick, and I'll save another report. So reports, order transaction reports, and you set up your time frame in there. So bookings, it has a default one in there, and off you go. You can save these as well. You can also, if you go into customize, it'll show you what it did. Again, here's where we're at in that order report builder. And it's set up all the defaults you created on that first screen in here with a default template. And I'll let you play with that on your own as far as how to pull that together. So, and again, if you have questions, pop those over to Cameron in the chat, and he can stop me if there's any questions. So, and on that note, Cameron, any questions so far?
Nope, not so far.
Okay. All right. We're good there. Now, I wanted to show you, again, those are the basics, just trying to get in with some basic reports and basic details. I wanted to sneak one fast one in real quick because this is one that I think a lot of folks forget about. Let's say I want to just routinely see what's booked this week. In other words, I don't want to, or actually last week, and maybe for a specific criteria in there. What you can do is click on Find. And maybe I want to take again my status or the release status of hold and partial. Okay. And I only want commission orders. I don't want any sell orders because those are, maybe I'm processing those a little bit differently. And I can add other details in there. Maybe I would like to pin that down to manufacturers that I'm really wanting to focus on. So I have one that I have in the system like that. And let's leave that where it's at. So I'm gonna hit OK. So these are the orders I want to identify. They're hold orders for a specific factory. And for some reason, I have this process by which I'm wanting to monitor that factory. Maybe there's something special about doing hold orders with this factory, and I just want to make sure we keep up with them. Now, I could go through and simply have to do this same search. By the way, there's a restore last, which is really cool here. My commissioned orders, hold and partials, again, for that one factory I'm looking for, okay? But you can store all this as a saved view. So we go to views and we can say save view. And I can say RV holds, okay? And just to do that again, view, save view, RV holds, okay? I hit OK. And what it just did is it added in here a view, okay? And just to show that there's nothing special going on here, I can go to views, get view, RV holds, and it runs that same query for me. Again, the key element here is whether you're using one of the lists that we've come up with here, one of the little process lists that we have here, or you create your own or you use a report. A lot of what we're trying to do in Oasis is, again, trying to find a report to kind of help you drive processes to make sure that you get the order in the system and then follow up with that order as it goes through the process of being shipped, invoiced, paid, please get paid on this, and closed out so we can move on to the next set of orders, hopefully. Okay, so basic stuff there. We'll get in a little deeper on that. Now, another report that came up, and I know there's a lot of reports and going real quick. Cameron, any questions if you want me to go back to a few things, but I want to shift gears a little bit. Let's start talking about shipping tasks. So again, under shipping, we have the same stuff we talked about last time, unscheduled, which again, this is a temp database. You'll probably have a lot of entries in there. And unshipped, again, what these lists mean, I covered that in the previous webinar. But again, these are the task lists to go through and identify orders that you've sent to the factory and to make sure that they're actually processing the order. That'd be kind of nice. And that they shipped it. And if you gave shipping information out to a customer, are they going to miss that with the latest update from their ERP, whatever it happens to be? Again, we hear about all the problems out there. But the key element is to go get that information, get the shipping in. The other thing I wanted to hint at is there's some added benefit to having the information in here. One of them is real simple to get more information from the factories, and I did show this one, but I wanted to go back and revisit what we call the Managed Shipping Performance Report. I'm sorry, back up. That's the next one. Shipping Date Request Report. So the Shipping Date Request Report typically is used so I can go through and identify all the unshipped items potentially for a given manufacturer. Okay, so as a matter of fact, that's here. So I can add in my factory that I'm having an issue with here and just monitor that it all happens. So in this case, I end up with a report. All these, I can send this over as a nice little email over to my factory, my customer service team over at the factory, and say, hey, I need to update on these orders because we're just not getting what we need, so we can update the customer and keep them happy, if you will. We make sure we service the customer there. So again, where I was at is reports, shipping date request report. And the key here is to be able to go out and ask the factory for that information. But this report can be used in another way that I find very interesting for a lot of the service teams and definitely management as it goes. Some of the issues pop up various times of the year when some of the factories struggle to get stuff shipped. I'll leave it at that. Trying not to give out too many details because I'm hearing some interesting stuff out there. Anyway, I click on rescheduled is one thing I wanted to hint at here. And I'll simply say, hey, I want to see all orders that are rescheduled 3 or more times out there. And I want to run it across the entire database. The issue here is if you have a factory that keeps redating the order and you're having issues with just trying to keep the customers satisfied out there, because every time with this one factory, we give them a date and they have to redate it, and it's another week later, and then it's another week. The customers get frustrated. So to give that information back to the factory, or definitely the management or customer service and quotes, so everybody kind of sees what's going on here. One comment that is popular right now is data-driven decisions here. You can do that through basically running this report and identifying who is the bad actor out there, who's having issues that we need to work with them on. So on this one, I have, again, that one factory out there, and this is just one order. Again, if you're having an issue with the factory, I've seen cases where there's hundreds of orders. They keep getting redated. So this gives you the information. It gives you exactly the order and exactly the items on those orders that you've been having issues with. So you can go and address that with management and again, within the company there, but also address that with the factory. Okay. So there's other neat things you can do with that shipping date request report. We talked a little bit about the missed target dates. Again, go back to the previous webinar to see what that is, but it's kind of nice to pull that together, see who's having issues there. Oh, and I forgot one critical details. Let's go back to that redated order there, because there's one other detail I did forget. So if you do have an order here, I'll take this PO number. Sorry, I come up with some goofy PO numbers here. And I wanted to show this real fast. And if I go into the order, there's not too much in here that shows me that it's been redated on line by line. In other words, I see whatever has my dates are right now. Right now, it looks like it's supposed to have shipped. Obviously, there's other issues if this was one of your orders. But again, it's test data here. But I wanted to show you a report. When you're inside of the order, I can go to orders and say order history. Okay. Now, there's a lot normally happens. Yours probably look like this. In other words, it'll just be a listing of the lines on the order. But if you click on shipping, you can see that it's been redated multiple times here. So acknowledged. So they keep acknowledging it as kind of a bogus data here. But then it's scheduled and scheduled again. That tells me that there's probably something wrong with this order. In other words, it keeps getting redated and then put back on acknowledged. Keep going back and forth there.
Mr. Bryan.
Yep.
We do have a question from the previous reporting tool. Does the rescheduled option in the shipping date report pull items that have been rescheduled and the accept target date has also already been selected?
Yes, that is good. That is a very good question. Sorry, flipped on something there. So the question, if I understand it correctly, is if I go through and in the system, if you're doing it, it'll start warning you, say that the schedule date is after this target date. And again, a lot of the details there in that previous webinar. If you accept the date, in other words, you put in a date that's going to ship in April, and then the factory says, no, it's going to ship in May. What the system will do is they'll say that you missed that target date. In other words, the first date was more than a couple of days after that original April ship date. That'll flag as a target date. What Oasis does is it keeps the April date in the history. It'll keep the May date in the history. And if they do it again in June, we have 3 times that order's been redated. And that's the reason why I wanted to go back and show you the order history. And it shows you literally every time that has been acknowledged or scheduled. And again, sorry about some of this bogus data in here because it's a test database. When I'm in your databases, I'll see rarely will I see acknowledged. It does happen, but usually it's shipped in April, shipped in May, scheduled in April, scheduled in May, scheduled in June, and still hadn't shipped. And that would trigger this report saying, hey, it's been redated more than 3 times, actually 3 or more times in the case. Anyway, let Cameron know if I didn't answer your question correctly or completely, and go forward. Any other questions, Cameron? That was a good one.
No other questions at this time. And she said that you answered it very well and says thank you.
Perfect. Occasionally I get them right. All right, shipping performance. So the next thing that happens, there's going to be a lot on shipping performance in the end of year reports. I'm hoping there's some cool stuff, but that we're doing that I want to expose people to. But there's another report that, again, I'm in orders here. That's where that shipping or shipping date request report was. The one I almost selected earlier is the one I got excited about because I forgot about it and I wanted to show everybody is the managed shipping performance. There's a lot of stuff you can do with this. Main thing I want you to do is when you go in here to manage the shipping performance on this, it's going to basically show the shipping performance by each brand, by each factory that you have. Now, you don't want to leave this wide open. As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure it'll work. Usually I'll go to last year to this month okay, because most likely, well, it will ignore all orders that don't have any shipments against them. So you have to have shipping information for it to actually be on the report in the first place. So what I do is I'll go from last year to this month, or maybe the last quarter if I think there's a change in shipping. So let me do an update real quick. It'll be a little easier to explain, at least easier for me to explain. What it just did is it ran the report and said, for this one factory, we had a count of 3 lines. These aren't orders, they're lines on orders. Again, this is a small database. We had a minimum of 36 days, a max of 36 days, an average of 36 days. Again, this is kind of a bogus database here. But the key here is, I know that for that particular brand, if this was your database, it'd take about 36 days to ship an item for this brand. Again, if the counts are small, you're probably dealing with a lot of variability there. But if the counts in your databases, when I'm getting to see when I'm out with one of you, is this may be 100 or more in that type of time frame. And that tells me that there's usually some pretty good data here to go with. Okay. Now, back on my conversation about dates here, because this is the important critical element, I think, on using this report. That is, if you go like, beginning of time, so 2001 or something like that, when Oasis came into existence to today, this isn't going to have a whole lot of meaning because there's been all kinds of ups and downs with the factories. Usually it's last year to this month is a good, nice one to use because it gives enough data that you can get a good feel for what those factories are doing as far as how they're shipping. Okay. Now, if you feel that there's been a change in the market, so maybe the shipments when that big ship got stuck in one of the canals over there, I can't remember if it was Panama or whichever one it was. Yeah, we saw some interesting conversations with folks, and that did back some stuff up. So in that case, you probably want to pull this back. And be careful if you're within 1 month, 30 days of this. It'll help a little bit, but again, the number of orders that you have probably won't be enough to really give you a good statistical read on it. But if you can keep that within about 3 months or more, then you usually have enough data here to really see what's going on. And again, your low volume factories is probably never going to be the greatest anyway, because it's a statistical average is what it is. Okay. Enough of that for a second. Main thing here is we have other options in here I want to touch on. If you do have a factory that does supply does supply shipping programs in a download feed or in the price files, we can get with you where that's stored. It's in the stock column if you're familiar with that. Then we can split it out a little bit more. So by default, the system is going to split it out by stock, project, and other order types, which helps a bit because a stock order usually goes a little bit quicker than project. Project tends to be orders that are made to order, although there's basic stuff in there as well. But the shipping programs help. So in some of the factories we work with, they'll say if it's made to order or not in the pricing download, or it's on some sort of shipping program. If they do that, then it splits it out a little bit more. And again, be careful in that there may be lower volumes and it may not give you good results here. But typically it works. In other words, if it's in the shipping program, you'll see things split out that are kind of pre-made or boxed, if you will, versus items that are made to order. And you'll see those split out here. But again, you have to have a factory that gives you that information in price file download, or if you have a price file, there's a column in the price lookup. I don't want to go into deep details there, but again, support can help you with this. But in the price files, there's a stock column. Just put that shipping program in there, and the system will start tracking that for you. So, okay, any questions off of that? Okay, all right, that shipping performance. So that got us through most of the details there. I want to bring back I didn't close it out. There it is. All right. So we've been through all these hold orders, basically the service related reporting. There's a lot more I could go through there. I just want to do a real quick pass with some basic items there. There's some really cool stuff I want to start splitting out towards the end of the year, actually in a few months, and I'll get to that here in a little bit, but that's where I'm going to stop for today. Now I'd like to shift over to accounting related reporting off of your orders. And again, these are some basics just to kind of get you some details here. And I partially went through some of this already, but I want to dig just a little bit deeper in there. All right. So let's go back into orders. Under reports, let's click into order transaction reports. Okay. The first thing first one I want to look at is what we call order backlog. So there is another concept called quote backlog, and we have both of them in Oasis. We'll go and show you another webinar a little later in the year. I hope over quote backlog, different conversation. But order backlog is an order that was put in the system that you basically haven't been paid for yet. So basically, once the order is put in the system, it's on the backlog, and once you get paid for it and invoice complete, there's some other details. It'll pull it off the backlog. But to run the report, all you really have to do, and I'll show this one more time, is go into orders, because we're trying to show the orders, not invoices or payments. Trying to show the orders that are still in the backlog. In other words, we haven't got paid on. So order transaction reports, order backlog. And this is another one where I'd like to go at least back to last quarter. And I typically don't want to go back more than, I don't want today, because everything I booked today, I haven't got paid on. It would be really nice if we got paid on orders we sent over today, but it's not going to happen. So go back at least 1 month, like last month. Some old friends of mine that have been doing this for a long time, they'll go back to like last year to last quarters is pretty typical for them. But however you decide to do that, basically know that anything posted over the last month, basically you probably haven't been paid on yet. Right. There's other things you can do. You can run it out by sales accounts. You can group it by work group or whatever. But the main thing I want to show is the following. And I did touch on this one before. I wanted to show it one more time because it blends well with another conversation. But the main thing is when I get an order in the system, it shows a billable amount. So basically the total amount of this order is $7,000. We still have $1,400 to bill on this, or the factory does. So there has been a little bit of movement on this particular order. So it has been invoiced, it's just not invoiced complete. It probably hadn't been shipped complete as well, but that's a different conversation. Now, the next thing is it starts breaking out the received. So we've received $6,000 on this thing. Interesting. And we still have $1,000 open. So that's kind of wild. So we got a pretty good payment on that one. Probably I probably messed up in booking a payment, but that's another conversation. But the main thing is we had $7,000 that we had credit on that. We received $6,000 on it, and we have $9,000 or $900 open on it. So again, kind of an odd order here. I don't want to go into the details on the specific order, but the key element I want to identify on here is on this order, it is going to keep this open until the following items happen. So first thing is we have to receive everything that the system expects. So basically the receivable has to go to 0. Okay. The billable also has to go to 0. I forgot about that one. So billable, we still have $1,400 open for the factory to bill on this particular order. That has not happened. So that's step 1. Step 2 is we have to receive everything. That's step 2. Okay. And then it basically will close it at that point. So those 2 options. Okay. Now this bottom one, if you notice, basically we have $6,000 that has been sales credit on that one. And we have $13 still left to bill on it from the factory. But notice we don't expect to receive any money on this for some reason. Probably it just hadn't been posted. So on this particular one, but the received and the receivable is kind of in limbo over here. That usually tells me to go post something outside there. The key elements on here that I want to hint at is this basically shows you how much you have receivable on each one of these orders. And as you get paid and you post the commission checks inside of Oasis, it will start closing them out. Okay. If you have an odd duck in there, in other words, it looks like you've received everything the system expects, and it doesn't show as or still shows as a little bit open for receipt, nothing open for receivable. Sorry about that. You probably just need to go ahead and post the payment is usually what happens. So, any questions there, Cameron?
No questions at this time.
Perfect. Old report, but it works great. And again, this is another one you can actually set up as a report title. As a matter of fact, let me do this real quick. I have my order backlog. I'm going to say webinar. Okay. And I could do some other items here. Main thing is I wanted to save that, and we will come back to why I did that a little bit later. All right, orders without invoices. I almost forgot about that one. The same thing in order transaction reports. It's kind of nice to know which orders you don't have invoices. So on. So orders without invoices. Typically, I'll see a case where a specific factory sits on invoices or doesn't give you invoices until they pay you. Or they may not give you invoices at all. I've seen that one as well. But if you want to take a look at the orders out there to find out, hey, what's going on with the orders that have been put in the system, and start following up on out there. So maybe you have a process, if it's more than 3 months old, maybe we go out and find out if the job's closed, or maybe look to see if another order has been paid, maybe by your major brand. And what's nice about that is then you can go out and find out, yeah, that job's done. Now we can go back to the factory and say, hey, we know the job's done. What's going on here? But let me go ahead and print this real quick. Again, it's a basic report. These are the 2 orders I have. One of them, no, both of these are regular orders. So in both cases, we have basically an order in the system. It's just waiting on that invoice. So basically the billable column is the one this one's focused on. We have a sales credit of 1,000. We have a billable amount of 1,000. It hadn't been billed by the factory in this case. Again, this one is a $2,000 sales credit. They haven't done anything on it. And this one, we found out it's been shipped. That one's a dead ringer, especially for, what date was this? Yeah, it's May to June. Yeah, something's wrong. They're sitting, they would, if this was in your database, I'd be like, you really need to send them a note on this order to find out why they haven't sent you an invoice. Are they not getting paid by the distributor or what? And that will lead to the next conversation, what's going to happen to get you paid. So, okay. All right, so that's orders without invoices. Orders written off. So this last one I want to go over as well. Most of your databases, when I talk to the accounting teams that really are on it, in other words, they go through and they say, hey, it costs us money to chase all these payments from the factory. So if they're sitting on invoices or they're paying slow or they're a little off in their accounting system, in other words, they pay a little higher, a little low, it costs you money to do that. And some groups will take a $50 threshold. There's a place in Oasis to put this. Again, pick on support. That's what Cameron and that group's there for. They can help you set up these thresholds I'm alluding to, where you say, hey, if they pay us something and they're within $50, go ahead and close out that invoice and close out the order. In other words, you're going to write off $50. So the other question that popped up years and years, it has been over a decade now, was if I have a factory that maybe they have a new accounting system, and they're off $1 here, they're off $1 over there and on each other, on these orders. The question becomes, how much have I written off? Is it hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars? Long story short is, this was written when one of the owners of one of your colleagues out there suspected that the number was more in the tens of thousands of dollars. So we wrote this report, like I said, this is over a decade ago now. And let me just run it so you can take a look at it real quick. What it is going to do, actually, this database, I'm good. I don't have to worry about it. Yours will probably have some of these where you've written it off. In other words, you closed it short. And again, I have too many of these webinars where I forgot to create a fake order here to do this. But it will show you an order in here. It'll show you the credit that's on there. So let's say it's a $2,000 order. It'll show you the amount that's billable. Okay. And it'll probably say $2,000 well, because they billed it complete. You received, let's say it's a 10%. So you received $190 and you have $10 open. So instead of arguing with them again, you just close that out. Okay. Because it's within your threshold. And again, if it's one order and you've lost $10, you could argue the fact that by the time you chased it, went through all the headaches to get paid and whatnot, it wouldn't be worth the $10 to go get it. But if you had 1,000 of those, now you're into $10,000 worth of money that you didn't pay for that factory. That's when this report really starts to take off. So again, sorry, I tried to get ready for all the details, and I actually didn't run that report before I did this. I like to have a little data on there to talk through. Apologize on that one, but it still doesn't invalidate that report. It's a big one, and a lot of folks really are on it to run that. So again, where you go to find that: orders, reports, order transaction reports, orders written off with balance due. Basically, you got underpaid. And this one, you can actually run it pretty much wide open. Actually, after a certain time frame, so maybe last year to today or something like that would probably be what I would do. The key here is after so old, as you know, you can argue and be mad at them all you want. You're not getting any money out of them. So anyway, whatever that time frame is in the past where you're going to give up trying to argue about money, you go for it. So, all right. Any questions, Cameron?
No questions at this time.
All right. So either I'm doing good or doing terrible, and I'm sure I'm doing at least okay. All right. Orders right now. All right. I did want to show you one 04 item here because it's becoming more important for some folks. The best way to explain it is this is what we call pat aging. Let me show you 04. I know a lot of you probably hadn't been, well, actually, I don't know who all's on here. Maybe everybody using 04, I don't know. But when you first log into 04, the home screen's a little different. I don't want to go over that right now. But if you go into invoices, and then you go into reports and this thing called pat aging. Okay, I did run this one a little bit earlier because I wanted to show you some details here that are important. The key here is kind of like the orders written off and some of these other tools we've had in the system. This is a newer one that uses machine learning, whatever that is, AI, fancy thing, whatever. But what the key element here is it tracks how long it takes for an item on an order to ship. That's by default in the system, and there'll be more on that later this year in some webinars. And then it tracks how long it takes to take a shipped item and get paid on it. In other words, it goes through the process of getting it released, shipping, and invoicing. We kind of equate those two when it comes to the time frames because typically they happen the same day or within a day or two. And then you get paid. So it knows on each one of these items. The key is I put in an order, a couple of orders earlier today, and that's basically, July. So there's a controls order and there's some other stuff that I keep created in here. And it's already projecting when those orders are going to get paid based upon, again, the statistical data that is available to the system in this test database. Okay. And yours will be a lot more accurate and a lot better. But what I'm able to do here is on like the controls one, I can click in here on this and I can see the order, which is kind of nice. And I can actually click into the order, which is kind of nifty. But the main thing is this will be your data. And it will be kind of made up stuff like this. But you can look at the order and see, okay, well, we booked it 7/11 today, basically. And it looks like we're going to get paid in in a couple of months on this item. So basically, it's looking 10/3 is when it expects to get paid on this one. Now, all that's nifty, and I'll tell you how you can use the projections in the future, which is kind of nice. But again, going back to some of the issues we work with customers on, and that is some of the factories don't give invoices or they don't provide you an invoice until they pay you on that particular item. But if you go in the system and you actually put in the invoice date and you put in the date paid, the date received, then the system has some statistics to work with. Regardless, be consistent, because if you do those items, any of these orders that are in the past, so and I don't have any, well, I guess I have one right here. We have an RV order that was booked, should have been paid back in May. I can click into there and it looks like an order that was released in April. The system expected to get paid in May because of the way they release and pay items, and I didn't get paid. So it is a neat tool. It's I'm starting to get reports from users that are just looking at this for some of the factors starting the slow pay. Well, the economy is kind of in a weak point here, so I kind of see why they're doing it. I just don't agree with it. But you can use this pat aging to really take a look at anything in the past to get an idea for anybody that's slow paying and kind of start working with them to get paid. You did the work and then you get paid for it. So anyway, neat item there. If you have more questions on Pat, well, let me do one of them before I go forward on this. The other thing that's kind of nice, just kind of sneak this one in there, is right now we're in July, and I don't want to go into the super details on this, but since it's projecting into the future, each one of these orders, and it also projects the invoices, what we're finding is it's pretty accurate projecting 1 month in advance as far as income. And then 2 months in advance, it starts getting a little weak, but it's usually decent. It starts falling off after about 3 months because it's using order and invoice data to project into the future. And this would be kind of nice to get an idea what cash flow might be like. Again, it's statistics and machine learning and all that. If you've been paying attention to all the stuff happening out in the world, these systems work pretty good, but you kind of have to use a little bit of knowledge with them as well. The net result is it can help identify cash flow into the future, definitely 1 to 2 months out. 3 months out, it starts getting a little fuzzy. So All right. If you want more information on Pat, either contact support, there's some help documents on there, and later in the year I'll do more of a deep dive into this thing again. Okay. Any questions? Otherwise, I got a couple of other items here. We're going to shift gears.
No questions.
All right. So if you do have 04, I did want to show you one thing over here, because this one's getting a lot of traction right now. So if you're on the home screen, there is under reports a neat little feature. Why it's not showing it? Batch report listing. Okay. And what it does, well, let me just, so I'll go under file, say new job. Now, there was a report over here, a hold orders report that we created a little earlier. So what you can do is I can say, okay, I want to run that report, the hold orders report that I just set up, and it has that last week or whatever the time frame is on it. And I can decide whether I want to send it to myself as PDF or Excel. Okay, I'll go ahead and put in, I'll put in Bradley, I guess, send it to him. But I can put in anybody at the company on this send to list, and then identify when I want that report to run and email to me. And that's it. As soon as I hit save job, it goes into the system, and then at that time that I have specified, so daily at 5 p.m. So every day at 5 p.m. I'll get an email that shows me all my hold orders. Now, most people probably run something like that, like on Fridays or Mondays or something like that, just to keep up on the list. Really neat report. You can have stuff run monthly. So again, like the orders written off might be a yearly thing, so maybe not that one. But anything like a hold report like this, maybe that's a monthly thing or a weekly thing that you run just to keep up with items going on there. And it's not limited to order reports. I've seen people set up quote reports and everything else just to have the system email a PDF or even Excel to them just once a day. Again, it's only 04, but it works real good. It's a neat little system. All right. Last one, unless there's some questions.
No question.
All right. So we've been through, we've been through all the service related items, been through all the accounting related ones, snuck in the running reports with 04, which is really nice. It's just a PDF that comes out, nice little email from the system. And if you try this and have any issues, by the way, contact support, they've been fielding questions on that right and left. Just get the email set up is usually the most interesting part of it. And that's gotten pretty easy too. All right, paying salespeople. This is the last one. I saved it for the last because I wanted to make sure I had just enough time to go over it. This isn't difficult on here, but it's commissions for account. As I was hinting at before, there's a new system that we're calling it Paychex. You'll probably stay that name because there's no real good name for it. But commissions for account wasn't a great name either. But when we get to 04, there's other things we want to do feature-wise that system will be able to do better than commissions for account. We probably won't get rid of commissions account. We're going to stay for a while. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you have a process by which you put information in the system and then have a report that you run to pay outside commissions, this is a report. If you haven't done this before, it's not hard. You can use it to come up with basically the amount that they've created value for the company on a per salesperson basis. So let me go into commission or payments. The assumption is I put the order in the system. Obviously, the order's not in the system. I can't do anything with it. I've created the invoice and applied it to the order. And I've created a payment. Again, these are the previous webinars, and I've posted the payment in Oasis. If I've done all that, then I can go into reports, commissions for account. And basically what I do is I take a look at the time frame by which I want to pay commissions. If you're a distributor or if you're trying to do resale in Oasis as well, again, that's a previous webinar there. I identify the time frames by which I want to close out the order and pay the individual. So the thought process is here, all of July, I'm going to receive a check either from a customer or distributor. I'm going to post it into Oasis. Okay. And then in August, I guess, is next. Brain's not working too good today. So on August 1st, I'll run this report. Instead of saying last month, I'll say for July. Okay. it'll go in and take all those posted payments and identify how the salespeople's were created with each, credited with each one of those payments that came in. So basically, if we received $1, we're trying to find out how much of that dollar we give to whom in the company. Okay. Adjustments, did show a little bit of that in one of the previous webinars on the payment screen. You can actually go through and deduct from a salesperson if they don't return a sample. And we can get more one-on-one if you're trying to develop a process around that. So it works pretty good. Okay, so I've identified the timeframes by which I want to pay the outside salesperson, or if I make any adjustments, when I'm going to take money away from them. And these usually line up, although I see some folks will take the adjustments and maybe go back even a month or two prior to that. So maybe it's 2 months ago instead of last month. And again, just trying to let that settle out before we start taking money back away from the salesperson. Okay. All right, so I'm going to run it for 2 salespeople, BH and demo. So sorry, I'm getting a test database. I really wish I could use some of these databases to show this, because it looks way better in your databases, but I'll run it. So what it does is it creates at least 2 pages per salesperson, okay, per sales account in Oasis. So you could actually make this for an office if you set up a sales account on a per office basis. But for most of our users, it's a sales account per salesperson. And the first 2 show the detail and then the summary for the first salesperson. So this is BH, again, it's me, Brian. And then the second one is demo, okay? And again, the detail and the summary. And then the last page is kind of an overview that you can use to confirm everything, and actually use it to, some people say they write checks off of this. In other words, they write the salesperson's paycheck off of this. Others kind of use it as the conversation that you have to say, okay, here's how we're paying, or I have a lot of conversations, I'll say that, with individuals trying to use this. But the main thing is this drives the value, or shows the value that this particular salesperson has provided the company. And then you can figure out how you're going to pay them, either straight off the sheet or some other conversation. All right. So how do you look at this thing? So here's the commissions for the agents. It's going to show all the show all the commissioned orders. So if you're a rep, this we filled in real good. If you do resell or your distributor, I think the next one shows both. Yeah, this is commissions, and this one's all the resell orders that we got credit on. And then any adjustments. I didn't do any adjustments here, so I apologize. I should have set up something like a sample that didn't go back, and we got dinged for it, if you will. So here it shows the details. And again, this is going to be very similar to the other reports in the system. This is a specific PO. We got an invoice on. So we got the PO, and it's part of this is a interesting example in this scenario. And it shows where Oasis will track not only the resale profit that we got paid by the distributor, usually in this case, but also we get a little bit of commission also associated with that factory. So they paid us probably, a couple of points on it, 5-10% or something like that. Okay. Main thing is we show how much the invoice was, how much commission we got on it. So I guess that was 5%. Interesting. And then basically they paid everything on it. They got the full amount. And this one, I just basically left everything in for the firm, or basically for the agency. So main thing is we have the invoice amount, the amount we got paid, and then how much the balance is. I want to save these last 2 columns for a conversation here real quick. So once the commission balance goes to 0, basically that means that we've been fully paid and how much we got paid this time. So again, we got $1 into the company, or in this case, we got $50 paid by this one factory, Brand A over here, whoever that is. And now in the user setup, I'll show you what this is at here in a second. I can identify how much credit the rep gets to take and how much credit goes to the agency. So I actually have some agents, or some agencies that will use this to pay straight commission. So if you're in that scenario or want to go to that level, you'll probably either in Oasis or on the side say how much money you want to actually credit that person that they brought in. So if they bring in $50, if they take $50 and you have no money to pay the customer service team or the quote team or anything like that, so you need to keep some for the agency, obviously. So what you can do in Oasis is set it up where you can identify how much the rep keeps. So maybe it's 10, 20% or something like that. So it'll go ahead and do the math for you and take 20% of 50 and put that over in the rep commission column and then leave the balance over in the agency. So we're trying to show all that detail right here, just so you can keep up with it. All right. Do we have any questions on that one, Cameron? Because that gets pretty deep.
No questions?
Perfect. Yeah, I sure wished I could be in one-on-one with folks because that's usually when I get the really interesting questions. So if you have those on the side, email them to support me, whatever, and we'll answer them back. All right, resale is kind of the same way. The only thing that's a little bit different is we have the, let me take a good one here. So we came through, that's a webinar thing I set up last week, I guess, or last month. The amount, well, the invoice is $938.36. We got all of it. Nothing's open. The little, we probably did a rounding thing there, so don't worry about the negative signs. It doesn't mean anything. It's zero. The invoice cost, basically it cost $855.85 for that product that was on there. We had $127.51 in profit. And what we did is we took it all to the firm because again, I didn't set up the user or the salesperson to show how much their take is off of this. And again, I'll show you what that's at here in a second. So that's the report for the most part. I mean, again, trying to pull all the detail, show how we arrived at the number. It sums everything together for you and deposits those numbers on the summary page. And there's a lot of little details in there I'm trying to skip. But one thing I do want to hint at is we do track in the system commission and overage separately. So you can have a split policy there where maybe they get no commission, they get a cut of the overage and a cut of the profit, or maybe some other scenario there. So I'll show you where that's set up here in a second. So, all right, I will close that one out. I'll go to configuration and users. Take a look at demo. And typically what you'd end up doing is identifying the commission account that they work with. And then you would identify the amount of commission they get to keep. Let's do 20 off the cross. Okay. And that does update the next time you run the report. So let's do that real quick. Commissions for account. Leave all the details the same. Print. Let's go to that second page because that's where I was at. And now it's split out of that $50 that came in. $40 went to the firm or the agency, and $10 went to the rep. Okay. That's commissions for account. And like I said, we'll keep this. I've been threatening for a while to get rid of this one, but most likely we're going to keep it. A lot of people still use this report. It does have some issues that most people are able to work around. If you crash any issues, just let us know. And some of them we can't solve because of the way the system works. But again, it mostly works for most people most of the time. All those issues are resolved in Paychex, and we'll talk through those again later. So. All right, any questions? Otherwise, I'm going to start wrapping up with some last minute.
No questions.
All right, so either I did really good or really poorly. So okay, did okay. All right, let's go back into let's go and start concluding. Already asked for questions. If you think of some again at the last minute, pop them in. We'll keep going. Otherwise, send them to support. That's the end of this series. Went through a lot of stuff that we see or get questions on after the order is posted to Oasis. In other words, what do we do next as far as the commissioning side, the resale side, and everything else. So now we won't have any webinars in August. Taking that month off because we have a lot of stuff going on that we're preparing for and trying to organize ourselves for the end of the year. I do plan on rerunning this webinar entirely in 04. So basically, most of what I showed you is already in 04. We're adding a bunch more. So once we have a few more of those features that are in what we call legacy Oasis now, basically what you're using in 04, I want to rerun this series and show you how it works because it looks a little different, but it works the same. And that's been the criteria for 04 is to make sure it works like Oasis. But we're taking the opportunity to but definitely make the system look a little more modern is one term some folks use, but also interact with the browser environment because it runs entirely in the browser as opposed to a desktop app. Okay. And we have some really big new features we're going to show. So we'll probably start with a few of the features and then hopefully I do the repeat of this webinar and then even some more features. There's just a lot going on around here. So again, the reason why we're taking August off. That's it for today, unless there are any other questions. I do appreciate your time. And if you have any comments, suggestions, or just need support, just give us a buzz. We'll be here. I thank you for your time.